Thank you for coming back. I can still remember the very first Christian book that I ever read. I didn't grow up in a Christian home, so I didn't have too much exposure to Christian literature. And then round about the ages of 15 and 16, found myself drawn into a response to Christ, particularly the giving of himself on the cross for me. And soon after that, I was given my first Christian book. And it was by a British Methodist, Leslie Weatherhead. And the book was called The Transforming Friendship. The Transforming Friendship. So right from the beginning of my own relationship with Christ, that title burnt into my own heart two very deep convictions that haven't left me. The one conviction is that the Christian faith is rooted in friendship. It's rooted in a friendship with the Trinity and with each other. That is what I was saying yesterday when I began to describe another kind of life. The life that Christ gives us, the life that Christ draws us into, is a life of deep friendship, ever-deepening friendship with the Trinity and with each other. And on the other hand, the other conviction is that as I enter into that friendship transforms me. It changes me. That happens with human friendships. I'm sure you've noticed that. When you enter into a genuine friendship with someone else, that friendship changes you, it affects you, it influences you. And so in a very similar way, that as we are drawn into this friendship with the Trinity and with each other, that is a transformative experience. It changes us so that we can become agents of transformation wherever we live and work in the world. So the invitation that I want to kind of unpack with you very briefly is the invitation to live in this divine friendship. When Dallas wrote his very first Christian book, it was called In Search of Guidance. There is a sentence in Search of Guidance that I want to call up on the screen. Very simple sentence, but it's a sentence that resonates very, very deeply with me. We are called to become friends and partners of God. Now again, I'm hoping that you see how everything is threaded together. We will only become friends and partners with God if our picture of God, is one that attracts us. I only want to become friends with someone who is, as it were, for me, wants the best for me. I don't necessarily want to be friends with anyone who's out to get me every time. And you think of the very first talk, we will only journey into the heart and life of God if God is someone whom we have come to know, loves us very, very deeply. So here are 3 simple thoughts that I want to offer you about living in divine friendship. I think the first thought is a very basic thought. That as we live in divine friendship, we come to realize that we can share everything in our lives with our divine friend. Can I say that again? We come to realize that we can share everything in our lives with our divine friend. There is nothing that we need to hide from Christ. And you will know Christ himself said, you may remember just before he was taken to the cross, John chapter 15, verse 15, one of my favorite verses, I don't call you servants any longer. I call you friends. I call you friends. And in that divine friendship, I can bring all of myself. I can bring all of myself. You may remember that earlier in my last input, I said that my psychiatrist asked me 2 questions. The one question was, what's your picture of God? The other question was a very intriguing question. I just shared myself with him for 1.5 hours. And then he said to me, Trevor, you know, I'm wondering what you haven't told me yet. I'm wondering what you haven't told me yet. And with that wonderful question, he helped me to put words to events that had happened to me when I was 5, 6, and 7 that I had not spoken about to any other human being. He gave me space. He gave me permission. And I almost have a sense sometimes, you know, of Jesus saying to me when I am praying, hey, Trevor, what haven't you spoken about yet with me? What do you exclude from your conversation with me? And so I'm wondering what you sometimes keep out of your conversation with your own divine friend. Now, you may say to me, and this would be a great question, you may say to me, Trevor, what is the use of sharing yourself with Christ? Surely he already knows everything about you. You don't have to tell him. And Dave hinted at this yesterday, that we don't share ourselves with Christ to give him information that he hasn't got. That's not the reason I share myself with him. When I share myself with him, I am giving him access into my life. Does that make sense? And my daughter, a number of years ago, was planning to get married. And a few months, I think it was 2 months before the wedding, she had a cycling accident. And I was called to ICU. When I arrived there, I could see as soon as I walked in that she wasn't going to be getting married in 2 months' time. Jaw was fractured in 2 places. Her face was badly scarred. She had lost a number of teeth. A very painful time for her. It was a recovery period of just over a year. But halfway through that recovery period, she had to have a very, very big operation. And as her father, I knew she was scared. I knew she was scared. But on the Sunday, just before she was to have that operation, she came to listen to me preach. I'll never forget. And it's always something special when my kids rock up to hear me preach. And after the service, she came up and she just put her head into my shoulder. And she said to me, "Dad, I'm really scared." Now, in that moment, I don't say to her, "You don't have to tell me, I know." It's not about information. What is she doing? She's giving me access into her life. She's opening up the frightened part of her life so that my love and my compassion and my care can enter into that area of her life. And because she shares with me, our relationship goes on a different trajectory as it would have gone had she not shared. She's giving me permission, consent to enter her life more deeply. So when I begin to share myself deeply with Christ, I'm giving him consent for his grace, his mercy, his healing to enter my own life more deeply and significantly. I wonder if that makes sense. So I'm wondering what you haven't shared with him. And we can share anything and everything. That's what it means to live in the divine friendship. Secondly, to live in the divine friendship, it helps me to realize that God is calling me to be a partner in the family business. That's what Dallas puts together so beautifully in that sentence. He puts friendship and partnership together. God has a family business. I'm speaking now in South African English. God has a family business. And that family business is not the church. That family business is the healing of God's world. That's God's primary business. For God so loved, not the church, for God so loved the world that God gives God's only Son. Jesus says, as the Father sent me into the world, so I send you into the world. The world, I always like to say this, the world is God's first fiancé. And so God's family business is the healing of this world. Wherever I'm placed in life, wherever I'm placed in life, I'm called in that place to be God's friend and God's partner. Sometimes we can make a mistake that in the divine friendship, we just, Jesus and I just look into each other's eyes all the time. But that's not the essence of the friendship. I never forget there was a young guy in our congregation many years ago. I watched him grow up from the ages of 17 to the age, I was in the congregation for a long time, from the age of 17 to the age of 40. And when he turned 30, he discovered the person he wanted to get married to. And so he phoned me up. He said, "Hey, Trevor, I've met the person I want to get married to." So I said, "Fine, let's get together for coffee, and maybe we can get together." So we got together. We sat around a table like that. And for almost 45 minutes, he was looking into the eyes of his partner all the time. After 45 minutes, I said to him, hey, I'm also at the table. I'm also at the table. It was almost as if their friendship excluded me. And I think in the same way, when I enter into friendship with Christ, he and we look out together at the world as friends and partners. Can you imagine your life on Monday morning? I don't know what you do. I don't know where you are placed in the world. Maybe it's a classroom. Maybe it's a hospital. Maybe it's an engineering company or an IT company. Maybe you're at home, homemaking. I don't know where you are on Monday morning. What would it be like for you to see yourself as God's friend and God's partner in the family business in that place? What would it mean? That's what it means to live in the divine friendship. I live as a partner with God in the family business where I am seeking to be God's partner in overcoming evil with good where I am in the world. Where I am. Dallas always used to say, and I think he really was spot on here, that each of us occupy a unique space in the world that no one else occupies. And if our light doesn't shine in that unique space which I occupy, it'll be in darkness. It'll be in darkness. What is that unique space you occupy on Monday morning? It's in that place that I and you are called to be partners. One more thought. When I truly begin to live in the divine friendship, how do I put this? I come to realize, and it's one of the deepest gift realizations I think that we can ever come to know. When I live in the divine friendship, I come to know that I'm never alone. That I'm never alone. Never alone. The amount of loneliness today in this technological world, this supposedly connected world, and we are connected, and I thank God for all the gifts of technology, is a profoundly lonely world. And loneliness, you know, exists at so many levels. Loneliness of leadership, loneliness of depression and anxiety, loneliness of decision-making, and the deepest loneliness of all, the loneliness of deep grief and heartache. And somehow when I begin to live in the divine friendship, I come to know that I'm never alone. I'm never alone. Many years ago, I came across a dedication in a book. I don't know who the writers are out there, but sometimes I read something and I think to myself, I wish I could have written that. And I came across this dedication in a book. And I just want to read it to you because it makes my point beautifully. I dedicate, this author says, this book to my friend who's always by my side and in my heart, and who's never far away when I'm lonely and confused, who always gives peace to my soul when I'm troubled and frightened and fearful of the future. I share with him my deepest secrets, my joy, my sorrow, my accomplishments, my shame. He always understands. He never accuses or criticizes, but often suggests a different way of doing things. And when he does, he inevitably prepares the way so it is not as impossible as I thought it might be. Over the years, I've learned to trust him. It was not easy. I thought that in following him, I would have to give up all the fun in my life. But I have discovered that he is the source of all joy and adventure. And indeed, he turned my life into a great adventure at a time when I thought it had come to an end. And I would like to suggest that he would like to be your friend too. If you would like him to be. If you would like him to be. Do not be afraid of him. He will respect your freedom and your independence more than anyone that you've ever met, because he wants you to be free. He just wants more than anything that you will accept him as your friend. And if you do, I promise you, you will never, ever be alone. So an invitation to live in divine friendship. I'm not an icon person, but I have one favorite icon. It's my favorite icon. It comes from the 8th century, and it's called Christ and His Friend. And I'm hoping that it's going to come up on the screen. And I would love you just to look at it for a few moments. It's one of my favorites. And for me, it expresses divine friendship so beautifully. Looking out in the same direction. Did you notice that? One person's feet are showing, the other person's feet are not showing. I wonder what that's about. One person pointing to the other. I wonder what that's about. That glow, sharing the same glory. I wonder what that's about. Maybe you'd like just to take a bit of time to let God speak to you a little bit through that picture. So for 3 or 4 minutes, we're going to be quiet. And if you then have energy, we're going to have a bit of conversation around the table. But I invite you just to maybe reflect on what I've shared about divine friendship. What perhaps becomes a little bit clearer to you through that picture about divine friendship. God calls us to be friends and partners.